Good evening and welcome to this August 9th, 2021 meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and our first item tonight is to approve the minutes of July the 12th. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce.
I'll second that.
Nick, thanks. Are there any comments, additions, or corrections?
I have an amendment, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Ms. Besser?
On page 4, regarding the project that Mr. Burke was working on, when I said to him, I talked about the addition, enveloping the property, and he came back with a statement about it, and he also, at the very end of his statement, said, "Point taken."
Okay, this is the next to the last paragraph.
Right.
Do you have that, Ms. Rose?
Yes, thank you.
Any other additions or corrections?
The only other thing is I would just like to circle back to the announcement on these minutes that we do visit Harlansdale regarding the cottages.
Yes, I am in the process of rescheduling the canceled meeting. It was canceled in June due to some inclement weather, but we are looking at September. Thank you for that.
Anything else? Then, please, let's vote on this as amended. Please vote by saying aye if you approve.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's done. Ms. Rose, announcements.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming in today. We do have a design review committee meeting scheduled a week from today on August the 16th at 4 o'clock here in the boardroom at City Hall. We will have a brief overview of the proposed changes to the Historic District Design Guidelines. I know we've met a few times as a DRC to discuss some of those proposed changes, but I want to bring you a high-level overview of what we're planning for our public draft, and we are looking at a public draft date for mid-September. So very excited and give you that overview, and we'll also have our regular agenda items. And we're looking about 3 or 4 at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item, vote to place any non-agenda items on the agenda. Are there any non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to citizens' comments on items not on the agenda. This is open for Franklin citizens to be heard on items not included on the agenda. As provided by law, the Historic Zoning Commission shall make no decisions or consideration of action on citizens' comments except to refer the matter to the planning director for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for historic zoning consideration at a later date. Are there any citizen comments for items not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our first item tonight, which is consideration of alterations masonry at 255 4th Avenue South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item number 1 is consideration of alterations to the property at La Casa de Mi Padre, which is at the intersection of 4th Avenue South and South Margin Street. Forgive me just a moment. I thought oh yes, I have an exhibit here for you. Okay, as you are aware, the applicant appeared before the DRC a couple months ago at the June meeting, and the DRC had requested additional information to be able to consider painting the historic brick. There is a timeline that was of the actions and discussions that have taken place up till this point since last October, and I included that as Exhibit 2 for your information. The applicant would like to move forward based on the findings that he provided from the consultant with which he worked to conduct a paint test removal. The applicant is proposing to paint the entire building, inclusive of the 1929 original building, which is the chapel, and then the 1960s or 70s brick addition, which creates an L shape for the form. The guidelines recommend that one preserve and maintain original exterior paint, masonry walls and details. And further, it's recommended that one repair, if needed, replace damaged masonry with new masonry that matches the historic masonry as closely as possible, and things like color, texture, profile. It recommends against the painting of masonry walls that have not been previously painted, unless there's been extensive repatching or repointing, as masonry provides a lot of character to a historic structure. A majority of the building has been primed. Upon examination of areas that have not been primed, as well as examination of photographs of the building prior to the priming, it doesn't appear that the masonry has extensive patching or repointing. So with that, the request to paint the original portion of the 1929 portion, it would not be consistent with the guidelines. The request to paint the addition, however, may be appropriate, as it appears to date to the 60s or 70s. I don't have an exact date on that. Based on some historical mapping, I was not able to indicate that, though it is clear that it is post-1950. The addition does not necessarily fall within the period of significance defined for the Franklin Historic District, which is to 1967. Following the June 14th Historic Zoning Commission meeting, the applicant contacted Ken Darby of Commercial Painting Incorporated to conduct the paint test removal, as was recommended by the Historic Zoning Commission. The test was completed using a low-impact vapor blasting method or a steam method on that south face of the mid-century addition, so not on the historic portion of the building. Mr. Darby's analysis of the work is included in Exhibit 3, and I do have it on the screen. His findings include that 95% primer removal begins to damage the brick surface, 100% causes minor damage to the brick surface. It includes that 90% removal causes no damage to the surface. And so on the screen here at the top, you see the 90% and how that appears, 100 in the middle, and then 95 here at the bottom. Mr. Darby also indicated that either a 95 to a 100% primer removal will require a thorough application of a water repellent, which could average on a 5-year rotation for needing to be applied. The guidelines also state that damage to historic masonry should be avoided. The guidelines recommend that the original masonry be preserved, maintained, as is the intent of the guidelines. Preserving historic resources is paramount, and then considering alterations to historic resources is important and secondary to that. So steam cleaning, like the applicant achieved here, is recommended by the guidelines to be conducted to remove any sort of particulate from the building if desired. That steam cleaning, being similar to what the applicant undertook here, would be appropriate, but that chemical cleaning could follow, as well as using some detergents, only if that steam cleaning is ineffective. Chemical cleaning can be more detrimental. It is recommended that steam cleaning like this be conducted first to determine how safe it is for the building. So with that, we have two different considerations. We have the guidelines recommending against changing the character of the building by painting it, and also recommend preserving the building's integrity by not damaging the bricks. So with that, it is recommended that the commission choose one of the following options. The options would be to continue to paint the building as proposed, to remove 90% of the paint from the building as demonstrated here, the applicant's contractor noting that no damage would result to the building as a result of this undertaking. That the applicant remove 95% of the paint from the building, with the applicant's contractor noting there will begin to be some minor damage to the building, or the option to remove 100% of the paint using the steam cleaning method, which the applicant's contractor notes will cause minor damage to the surface here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Pies.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, well, the test was done, like Amanda said, was in the kind of the newer part of the building.
Right.
We didn't do it in the old part. Basically, our conclusion is removing the paint. We have concerns on the type of treatment because basically it's abrasive. It's, propelling streams of abrasive materials against its surface. And we think that it's detrimental. And probably the question that we may ask ourselves is, what would be less detrimental, painting it or removing the paint? You can see the minor damage. Who is going to define minor damage? We want to preserve the integrity of the building, and we consider that removing the paint, in our view, is not an option. It's not an option because of it's detrimental. It's going to cause minor damage, as Mr. Darby is pointing. And I don't know if you have any questions, but basically that's our position in this case. And I think it's going to be expensive as well. And if we go, with a 90% removal, it's basically it's not going to be uniform because the part that haven't been painted is not going to look like that one, like the part that has been painted already. So it's not going to be nice. A part would be 90%. The primer would look kind of washed type of look, and the rest would look original. So we think that the first option, removing just 90% of the paint is not an option. And of course, removing it, I was there. I was a witness. It's under high pressure. It's against the surface of the brick. And thank God that we did the test in this 1990, 1970 construction building, and not in the old building. So if you have any question.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come back to you if we have
Perfect.
questions. Thank you. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? Mr. Rose, I know you come up. Just, if you would, for the record, just identify yourself and your address.
Thank you, thank you. Name is Chuck Rose. My wife and I live at 335 4th Avenue South. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We live about 4 houses down from the church, and I've become aware of this as I've watched the starting of the painting of the church and the stopping, and you guys are probably more aware than I am, the discussion of what is going on with the church. So the longer this has gone on, the more the community has become aware and the challenges. I clearly respect the position you all are in, that there are rules, there are regulations, there's a concern, my assumption is, of setting a precedent. However, as I've watched the crew pressure wash, this is my term, not the official term, the building, and then try to figure out what's the right thing to do, as well as the community discussion of what's the right thing to do. I know these folks have been amazing neighbors. We're very, very glad they're there. Looking at the 90% removal appears to me to be an exercise in trying to have both sides follow the rules. Having seen that and being aware of that, I believe, as Pastor Neal said, when you remove 90% of it, it really looks like there's still paint there, because there is. My suggestion is these folks have been through a lot. They've attempted, from what I can see, for quite some time there to rectify their errors or their mistakes in not following the rules. But I suggest after that, not to be as worried about the possibility of a precedent, to look at this and see good faith, good efforts to try to rectify their mistake has been occurred and allow them to continue painting the church, which, in my opinion, and many others, looks excellent and amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other citizens who wish to comment? No one else? Okay. Then we are ready for a motion then from the commission so that we can start discussion. Mr. Scalf?
Yes, sir. I move to approve a certificate of appropriateness for painting the building as proposed. And I guess that is consistent with one of the choices that staff listed.
Correct. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Nick, I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Mr. Mann. Okay. Questions, comments? Anyone? Ms. Besser?
This has been a hard road, and I appreciate everything that the applicant has done to try to make it right. And I will have to say, I will support the motion, even though it's very hard to make that decision. But I think that, you know, the end result, I think, is not going to be, if we have them remove the paint, it's not going to be what we really want in the district. So I will support the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Lester?
I do have a couple comments if I may.
One, we talk about damaging the building, and I'm certainly not for that. I'm not certain that we've explored significantly all the ways to remove paint that would be safer. And the reason I say that is I've contacted a couple of the brick companies and asked them, and they said they didn't recommend any type of abrasive method to be used on brick. And they recommended actually a product that they call Safe Strip, and they all carry it because they believe it's the best thing for brick. And I would like to see us explore more ways to safely remove the paint rather than go ahead and make a decision today. I will say, as far as damage goes for paint, that when you paint a building, you also damage the brick. Brick needs to wick moisture, and when you put a latex or a sealant on brick, it can't wick that moisture, and eventually it causes micro cracks in the brick, and that damages brick as well. And I'd like to see us do the best thing for the building and not make a quick decision. I would like to say one other thing, if I may, and that's that some people may ask, is this building historically significant to even be something that our board would even take in consideration? And knowing that this building was built for the Nazarene Church in 1929, that the Holiness Tabernacle had been there earlier, and that they actually used portions of that tabernacle for building this building, the foundation stones, the windows, the doors, the pews, the pulpit. Not only is the time period significant, but to me also the history makes that building significant for us to make a good consideration. I'd like to see our commission defer until we learn more about other ways to remove the paint.
Is that a motion to defer?
Well, I think there's a motion on the table. I don't
Yeah,
know
but a
that-
motion to defer overrides the motion
Oh, it does?
that's on the table.
There is a motion to defer to the next Historic Zoning Commission meeting so the applicant can explore more options for paint removal.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, have they explored removing the paint with the strips?
I cannot answer that question. Mr. Payez, have you explored any other option other than what you've done as far as removing the paint?
As soon as we knew that testing a type of removal, we did. Amanda was there, and there was another staff from the city of Franklin. We applied that. We didn't have in our favor the temperature, the weather, because it was just after we did the painting in the 31st of October. So it was after that, it was winter, and the conditions didn't work very well in our favor to see the results. But with that in mind, the product didn't remove anything from the surface. It was not successful at all. I don't think that the weather was a factor.
Okay, all right. Any other comments on the motion to defer? Then
I would just like to reiterate.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah. what Mr. Lassiter was saying, that maybe we don't have enough information. And as far as the definition of minor on this exhibit, I agree with what the applicant is saying, that we don't really know, do we, what minor damage is going to look like, especially because the experiment was done on the newer building. Is that correct? The newer building. Mhm. And then also, okay, go ahead.
Yes, it was in the newer part. I'm a chaplain. I do chaplaincy for Wasco. It's a masonry company. And after doing that, you have to apply, if you do that in a construction like ours, you have to restore the mortar between the bricks, which is a very costly process. Why? Because you're going to remove small parts of that, the
Yeah.
mortar between the bricks. You're going to remove that.
Indeed.
It's a high-pressure process.
Yes. I would like to add one more comment, that what the citizen was commenting, or the neighbor of the church, I appreciate what you were stating. And as far as good faith efforts, absolutely, I think we would all agree. The expanse of the efforts, I think, needs to be a little bit more developed.
Nick, go ahead.
I think that you've made significant efforts and good faith efforts. I disagree that we need to explore every single avenue possible. Presented with the options here, I don't think the 95 or 100% is anything, removal is anything we want to entertain. I don't think the 90% would actually accomplish anything either. So for that reason, I'm comfortable, moving forward with painting the building as proposed. I don't love it, but it does seem to be the best of the available options. And I do think you've explored enough options, alternatives to remove it, to warrant that.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Pierce?
I so want this to get over for everybody. It just is really, to me, unbelievably unfortunate that the test was done on the new part of the building and not the old part. I also know just enough to be dangerous. I don't really understand all this, but I do know that the kind of paint you use really, really matters on the integrity of the brick long-term.
Okay, well, just some comments from my own perspective. What has been done since we last met is exactly what we asked the applicant to do. It was the knowledge that we asked that we be supplied so that we could make some intelligent decision. We've been talking about this since October of last year. And I believe that based on the photograph, and I reached out to Ken Darby as well, and I said, okay, well, I've seen the photograph. What is this telling me? And he said, well, first of all, he said to achieve the 95 to 100% price removal is going to be a pricing adjustment, so it's going to be more expensive. Said the brick is very coarse and removing the paint from the pits and indentions requires extensive labor. If the 95 to 100% removal is approved, a thorough application of water repellent would probably be needed to maintain on a 5-year rotation, although inspections and testing should show an earlier application requirement or even possibility of an extended duration. And those were the things. So I think I'm going to vote against any deferral on this because I think it needs to move on. And I am fully supportive of going ahead and painting the building. I don't know of any other a better way to do it. We can defer this and defer this ad infinitum, but I think we need to go on and move on, and let's let the church get back to its business, rather than fooling with painting or not painting or stripping paint primer off the church. So anyway, those are some thoughts. So
Mr.
are
Chair.
there any other comments?
One last comment, Mr. Chair, and that's that, of course, I will have to vote no to actually painting the building, but I couldn't support the vapor blasting removal either because of damaging the church. I just
Okay.
want to make that clear as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I would add an amendment that the type of paint used,
Well, wait a minute. We
Okay.
got a motion to defer.
oh, okay.
So let's vote on the motion to defer unless somebody's got something else to say about the deferral. So if all in favor of a motion to defer, raise your hand. All right, we've got four, this is great, 4 to 4. All right, all against, raise your hand. Okay, so what do we got, legal counsel?
We have nothing.
All right, we're back to the original motion then. So are there any comments then about the original motion, which is to paint the building? Any other comments?
The other comment I would have is, I believe that if the building is painted, I do hope that there can be some input on using a paint that is as easy on the brick, because I do believe that painting brick hurts it. And I would like that to come to staff. The other thing that I don't think we have control over, but that I would plead with the church about, if this building is painted, when it was brick, all the woodwork showed, and it gave it a dimensional look. When you paint all the brick and all the woodwork the same color, the dimension of the building disappears. And I would plead that the church consider using some type of soft color for the trim to at least let the building have some architectural definition.
All right, you make it that as a motion?
Is that a motion or amendment?
We
Yeah,
can't control that. I don't think we can ask council. Can we do that?
Yeah, I think you can make it a,
Can-
the
that- I
painting.
know that I can make a motion that the paint come back to staff for approval and to explore a safe paint to use. Because I do know that painting a building causes spalling and it causes mortar damage also. But what I don't know if I can make a motion is that they work with staff on a trim color that gives definition to the building as it had when it was brick. A soft color. I think there's hundreds they could choose that would be appropriate. The guidelines, the first time you paint something, are you allowed to make stipulations?
I don't think there's anything in the guidelines that allows us to dictate on the trim color or how you
Okay.
paint the trim.
Well, then that would just be
a suggestion.
a plea to the,
But that would not be
The
part of
church.
the amendment.
We are willing to work out
okay.
and, Yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, okay.
Thank
So
you.
is that an amendment then, Mary? You
That
want-
would be I would have two amendments. One amendment.
One amendment?
Yes.
Okay. That the type of paint to use to be come back to staff, and that a soft color for trim for building definition be used for the trim. All right, is there a second to Mary's amendment?
I'll second.
Mr. Scout? Any discussion on the amendment? Then let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, good. Ms. Worthington voted no. All right, then let's vote on the motion then as amended unless there's further discussion. All in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hand. All right, we're back to
Can you keep your hands raised for a
4 to
moment?
4. Oh, yeah. Nick, Mary, Ken, and me.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're back to square one then. All right, is there another motion?
Is it possible to have a called meeting on this
For what purpose?
to whatever the people that want to explore something else can do it, and we can just move quickly on, as quickly as possible?
I mean, we can work to
We can work
schedule a meeting
yeah, we
if
can-
needed.
We can work that out, so what is?
Okay, then
what-
I'll go over to saying to defer it to a called meeting to be held
A
within,
called voting meeting?
called
we-
voting meeting.
Just a moment.
Can we do that?
My understanding of what Ms. Pierce is suggesting is that we would schedule a special called Historic Zoning Commission meeting, but I think that what
What
she,
is that
actually,
gonna
the
do?
purpose of it, of it would be more discussion, which would not be a special called meeting as much as
Well, they
a
could come to
DRC.
design review on Monday, could they?
They can. I don't know that there will be
What-
anything
what-
available by that
I'm trying to understand what
time.
purpose are we gonna do that? Either we're gonna paint the building or we're not gonna paint the building, I mean, and he's gotta remove it. So that, I mean, that's
Well,
where
with-
we are. So what
Mr.
are
Chair,
our
with
other
some-
options?
With some of the people that are against it, I've heard what Brian said, would they say why they want to defer it for more clarification?
Well, I think he has said, and I
know-
believe he has said there are other
I know
options.
what Mr. Laster said, I don't know what the others would want to achieve with
All right,
deferral.
yeah. Ms. Worthington?
Just the effect that other products are available out there.
Right.
Technology has provided us with some resources that are eco-friendly and not only lesser damage, but probably no damage at all. And the fact that the test was on the mid-century
New
modern
part,
section, how does that damage or limited damage would affect the existing structure, the 1920 structure? So there are other products out there.
Well, then I'll change my vote so it won't be a tie.
Mr. Paez?
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Not only myself dedicated good amount of time, good hours of calling companies, but also I requested the help of Amanda Rose to give me companies that would be able to do that job. Because of, I kept calling people, and when they saw the scope of work, not everybody was capable and have the technology of the product to remove the paint. So I did my job, but also Amanda Rose suggested me 2 companies. Lee Company, which is well-known in the city of Franklin, and Commercial Painting.
And Pastor Neil, before you leave, did you ever get a quote from Mr. Lee?
Mr. Lee came personally after the meeting that we have back in June. He came, Neil, I didn't return your call, but I hear the city, someone from the city called me. I'm here to help you. I'm gonna come back. Here is my cell phone. You don't need to send me a text. I'll be back and do a test. He never showed up. I saw him because he's doing a job across the street.
And the reason I recommended deferral is so to get more options, like hopefully he could come out. There's a product called EnviroClean, it's called Safe Strip, and it might work too, and that was the reason for my deferral. Maybe something else would actually work and not damage the structure.
Brian, I appreciate your love for history and your love for our building. I do, believe me.
And I appreciate
I do.
you being in our community.
Exactly. I do, the fact that you love history and everything, but we want to get done with this. Please. It's our, we love our community. We understand the historical love for each and every one of the buildings. And, but we want to get done with this. I think I did my homework throughout these months, which is not 2 months, 3 months, 4, it's been months, almost a year. And we want to get done with this right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to go ahead and provide that legal clarification. You may call a special meeting if you choose to do so on this matter, but it would be to vote on the matter.
And to vote on the matter.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make another motion
All right.
to approve a certificate of appropriateness for painting the building with the paint approved by staff. And the reason I'm making this motion again is it is irresponsible to continue to kick this can down the road. And with the limited resources this congregation has, and we have said how much we enjoy having them in the community, I think this is disrespectful to continue to do this.
All right, there's a second to that motion.
I'll second that.
Who-
That was Nick.
Oh, Nick, okay. Discussion. Any other discussion on it?
I concur with what Ken said. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, are we ready to vote on that? Again, we're back to the same motion as amended before, for staff to approve the paint. All right, all in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. All opposed? 4 to 4, we're back to the same place, so we're not getting anywhere, folks, at all.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to defer, but I think we need to give some extremely clear guidance on what we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I
And
couldn't
in a
agree more.
timeline in which they can do it, and
And what
I
are
think
we, yeah,
it's-
what are we looking for, and how quickly can that be done?
it's not fair for the applicant to continue
Absolutely.
fishing for something that may not exist.
Well, Mr. Chair, there are people that would, I think, be able to help us quickly if we had asked them. I don't quite understand why we haven't.
I
But,
cannot answer that question.
But I would be, for one, happy to take on calling any contacts I know, because I think if we don't want this, we need to know what we do want, and it's gone on long enough,
long.
is
It's
how I
gone on.
feel. And so I would be very happy to pursue, to help pursue moving this on if I can.
So how much time would you think you would need in order to make that, to pursue that?
I can be very aggravating, so when I'm approaching people. So, I mean, I would try to do it, as soon as possible.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, may we ask Ms. Rose how long of deferral she thinks we should ask for?
Yeah, how long, okay,
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I know the applicant has tested one method. I agree with Mr. Laster, there are other methods out there. I did work with the applicant last year with the city's funds to test another method. It's similar to peel, to the safe strips. It's called a peel away solution. I know that there was inclement weather that weekend, as Mr. Paez had listed or stated earlier, but ultimately that test did not
work.
yield any results. And it could have been because of the weather, it could have been for other reasons. He believes other reasons. I can't say with certainty because the product did require a temperature threshold that we weren't working within a very finite window to achieve. It was a weekend where there was potential warmer weather than you would typically have in November or December. But ultimately, the deferral would be based on what the commission is asking the applicant to achieve. He suggested that he doesn't know who else to go to.
All
So
right.
if there are some options laid out for him, or folks who can give him information, I think he's concerned that, and I don't want to speak for him, I'm just saying what I understand him to have said right here is that he's not getting estimates or callbacks for removal.
I understand. So if we have a called meeting a week from next Monday, is that enough time for you to do your notifications?
Yes, it would be on
What's the date?
Monday, the 23rd.
So that would give us, is that going to give us,
So if we were to do that, then, and Mary,
how many working days does that give?
14.
14, yes,
all right, and that
I
includes
think-
would be a test too.
yes.
So that we've got more information. Well, I don't
Yes.
want to just go in there and not have some other alternative.
Mr. Chair, 14 days seems awful short to me.
What, 14 days?
Yeah.
I think we need to fast track it at this stage.
Well, if it's been 8 months, what's another month?
Well, it's another month. That's, yeah,
Now, construction is,
yeah, it's booming.
there is not, you know that. The
It is
city
booming.
knows that.
We know that.
14 days is not enough for a test to take place. And another month, for us, it's quite long time for us already, Brian.
All right, so,
Because we're gonna celebrate a year with this issue.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I think what frustrates me is we gave them specific direction prior to this meeting, and they complied with it, and we're still turning them away.
and now we're still
Right.
fiddling with it, so. But I think we're at the point where we don't seem to be going anywhere to get an up or down vote on approving the painting. So the other alternative then would be to defer. So if somebody, and Mary's volunteered to do that, so I would say if we can find this out in, you want 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks?
Well,
Including whatever testing we can get done.
what Mr. Perez just said is the truth. It is the busiest
Yes.
time of construction in the history of my life. So
I won't comment on that.
I'll make a motion, well, I'll just make a motion to defer to the next regular meeting where we will have as much information as is possible. And I'm,
So you're
so
September
sorry.
now? You're September?
yes.
Okay.
It's September the 13th.
And if I could add, when we say as much information as possible, the things that matter, I think, are to see what kind of, what the reaction of the old historic building is going to be to these tests or these treatments, number one. And number two, I just want to reiterate that, that we do not mean any disrespect at all to the applicant, at all. That word was used previously, and that's hurtful because as a commission, we work very hard to be as fair and equitable as we can. So I wanted to say that. And also, it would be helpful to speak to an expert, to hear the expert come before us and explain the
I
process.
consider Mr. Darby an expert. He has a commercial painting. We have access to it. Mr. Roberts, talk to him. He has a report on this issue. I consider Darby an expert in what he does. Otherwise, what he did is it's not something that we.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree that he would be an expert. If we were to have questions to address to him regarding either this or regarding any other test.
Mr. Roberts talked to him. He mentioned in this meeting that he had a phone call with
Okay.
He said
Okay,
that.
I guess
Okay,
that
He said
leaves the
that.
rest of us out,
Yeah.
though, is the
Well,
only thing.
But
So,
he's an authority here, and
Yeah.
he has his report.
Yeah, yeah.
He did.
Okay,
Sorry.
I've spoken my piece, so thank you.
Okay, so we've got, are you seconding Mary's motion, Lisa?
Yes, with a little more specificity regarding
Yeah.
the
All right.
treatment.
And
To the
Mr.
next
Chair-
voting meeting, which is September the 13th. Any other discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So since we're getting a little more specific, I'd like to see some estimates on some chemical removal, and that's the main thing. Let's just rule this out.
All right. And then
And
I
I'm
would
not talking
suggest you
about-
and Mary collaborate on that.
Yes, would
along
you
with
help me,
with Amanda.
Mr.
Um,
Wise?
and-
If we are allowed to do this as board members, I don't know legally what we are allowed, how involved we can.
Well, going back to when we got Ken Darby involved, I called him to do it, or got him, or gave Mr. Perez his name, because I have personally worked with that company on my home 2 or 3 times for the historic roof that's on it to get it painted. So I know
would
what
be-
they will do.
I'd be more than happy to make inquiries, but I need to make sure that it's,
May I ask a question, please? Okay, so just to clarify, there is a request to defer for additional information, and then the request was narrowed to say estimates for chemical removal. We all know chemical removal can be an option. Is the applicant being requested solely to get estimates for chemical removal or to undertake a test of chemical removal?
I think, my sense is, from what has gone on tonight, is that we find out whatever other alternates are out there, get it tested on the building, and know specifically what it's going to cost the church, and then so that we can make an intelligent decision to vote up or down on this situation at the next voting meeting. Now, that's my sense of what I've gathered with all this conversation.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
if we as a church reject this and we go to court, would be an option to us? Would be an option? Because we have been playing around. We haven't, this is not fair. This is not fair to us. We are a church of immigrants here. We are not powerful. We have no
Yes,
money.
I understand.
And this issue is becoming an issue bigger than it is.
I understand that.
No,
We've got a commission.
I
up
don't
here.
think, you have talked to Mr. Darby, Mr. Roberts, and he's an expert. We have seen the result, and now we're going to, at the beginning, hey, we need more estimates. We are not doing that. We are not. We're not doing that. In the name of the freedom in the United States, I'm coming from Venezuela. Venezuela, it's houses belong to there is no private property. And this is becoming an issue, a personal issue where you're going to look for estimates. Not even me. You are going to look for estimates to make a decision
Okay.
in our property.
That's enough. I
We-
understand. I
Because
understand the dilemma.
we have done what you require from us.
I agree with you.
And we have been talking
When about
48
50
minutes.
minutes, almost, yes. I understand. Counsel.
I was just going to.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to add, Ms. Pierce and Mr. Lassiter, that any inquiries that you make, you should send them to Amanda so that she can then send them to the applicant. I don't think it's appropriate for you to be finding estimates and working so
No.
closely with the applicant in your position. And so,
I think that our role is we keep hearing from some of the members that there are other options, and I think it is to educate ourselves on all the other options, and we can give those to Amanda. No, we do not have to work directly.
Can I say something? You have enough time from October 31st until now to become, to look for information, because otherwise you were not interested in our case.
Mr. Paez, this body needs to be able to vote, and there's been ample opportunity and
Yeah.
discussion for this item. I realize it is very difficult for all involved, but this body needs to go ahead and vote on this application and move to the other applications tonight.
Thank you. All right, we've got a motion on the floor that Mary made and then Lisa has seconded to defer this to September the 13th, to September the 13th. And Amanda, do you have all the information you need relative to that?
I understand that the deferral is based on requesting additional information, estimates and testing for chemical removal specifically. Is that correct?
Yes,
On the
including not
historic
just
building.
information, but whatever additional testing that has to be done.
On the historic portion
On
of the building?
historic portion of the
Yes.
building.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Then, all in favor of the motion to defer, please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, the motion to defer passes with Mr. Mann, Mr. Ken, and myself voting no. All right, we're going to move on to the next item. Consideration of new construction covered deck at 410 Main Street, Johnson Property Services applicant.
The applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the reconstruction of a deck that was damaged by fire at the property, and then alterations to what was previously there by covering the deck with a roof and then enclosing the upper area. The applicant appeared before the DRC to discuss the proposal at its June and its July meetings. The guidelines recommend that decks be located at rear elevations with lesser visibility from the street and be designed to be simply constructed using wood balusters that are less than 3 inches apart and are less than 2 inches in width and depth. The proposed deck maintains the same dimensions as the previous deck, which are appropriate, and it's constructed of wood and standing seam metal roofing. The upper level is proposed to be screened. A short parapet extension of about a foot is proposed to be constructed to allow for an appropriate roof slope and required ceiling height. It is proposed to be stained a dark, medium dark, semi-transparent color, and the deck is mostly consistent with the recommendations of the guidelines as such. I did want to note that in response to the recommendations of the DRC at the June meeting, the applicant worked to determine whether or not the new deck could tie into the historic building underneath its existing eave, so as to avoid the need for a parapet wall and to allow for the rear elevation of the building to read more clearly from the exterior. The applicant determined that the top of the rear window sits only 6 inches from the bottom of the current deck joist, and so it's simply not possible to achieve a functional or required ceiling height without building the short parapet wall if a cover is proposed. So with that, it is recommended that the commission approve the covered deck construction with the condition that the parapet extension be designed to be reversible so that the deck or the deck roof could be removed in the future if desired without negative consequence to the historic building. Further, it needs to meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a building permit, and any changes to the approved plans by the Historic Zoning Commission must be returned to staff or the commission for approval prior to work commencing. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to comment, please?
Hi,
Hello.
how are y'all?
Good.
Hanging in there, good. Well, we met previously, and I believe it was all this, sorry, I'll do this.
Thank you.
For right here. And I believe we met all the requirements that Amanda has been working with us on. If you saw the deck before, it was atrocious, and I promise this will look gorgeous. You'll all want to come sit on it.
Okay, thanks. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? Hearing none, commission, we need a motion.
I'll make motion. I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the covered deck construction.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken. Discussion.
My only comment is that, thank you for moving so quickly to, get that rebuilt. I actually was eating at the Red Pony the night that it burned down. We had just left, so pretty surreal. So I feel bad for everybody that went through that. So thanks for moving quickly.
Thank you. I guess 5 months is kind of quick.
Do it.
I guess 5 months is kind of good.
Any other comments? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, then, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We're done.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is consideration of new construction at 113 Splendor Ridge Drive, Mike Ford Builders, applicant.
Okay, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for the new construction of a principal structure with attached accessory, which is at Lot 3 of Splendor Ridge Drive. The applicant appeared before the DRC to discuss this proposal at its July meeting. Just as a brief update, the commission approved a preliminary COA for the entirety of the Splendor Ridge subdivision at its April 2018 meeting, which defined the parameters for the new construction's height, setback, scale, and massing. So that's all taken into account with the review. So the proposal is a 1.5-story cross gable residence with a single bay covered porch here, and with a centered pediment. There is a single bay railed terrace located to the left of the porch, and both the entrance and the terrace are located within this main gable. And then underneath the secondary gable is a bay projection on the bottom floor. A two-bay garage is attached to the structure at the.
Excuse me, Ms. Rose, it's not on the screen.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't realize it cut itself off. Okay, so here is the single 1.5-story structure here. A attached two-bay garage is proposed to be located at the rear of the driveway on the right side of the structure. The proposal is mostly consistent with the guidelines. The materials are proposed to be appropriately ascribed to the architectural style of the building. The DRC comments were that, the applicant should have a taller window here and lower this foundation base. So that has been achieved. I'm showing you a rendering that hasn't been updated, but I will go to the elevations set and show that, yes, the applicant did better meet the intent of the guidelines by lowering this base and adding taller windows with more trim. The application does not meet the recommendations of the guidelines as far as building coverage. However, the proposed building coverage is 39.5% on this property, which is not consistent with the recommendations of not exceeding 35% roof coverage in residential zoning districts such as R1, which is the location of this particular property. So with that, it is recommended the commission deny the proposed new construction, and if issued a COA, all the windows have historic profile and dimension, be approved by staff prior to issuance of a building permit, and then also if issued a COA that it meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department, and any changes to the plan must be approved by other staff or the commission prior to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Amanda, for your summary. I apologize for not getting those renderings updated and attached, but the happy effect is that we get a little bit of before and after.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you pointed out, we were able to lower the foundation around that bay window. The only other change of note was there was some talk about the perceived verticality of everything. And one really minor thing that I also did was to spread out those vertical trim boards, so they're 24 inches apart rather than 16 inches, and I think that helps maybe lessen that perception a little bit. Other than that, I'll just open it up to any questions you guys might have.
Okay, are there any citizens which comment on the application? Hearing none, we're ready for the commission to make a motion. Somebody.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the new construction with the staff conditions. And the reason for going against staff recommendations is because we've approved these lot overages, coverage overages before as long as they're under 40%. So consistent with past precedent.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. All right, discussion.
I have supported the overage because of the amount of open space that is in this development. And I do believe that the new rendering on A4, the new elevation, is responsive to the requests that were made.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from anybody? Ready to vote? Then all in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All opposed? Ms. Besser. Ms. Besser. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Ted. All right, we're ready for item 4, which is consideration of alterations dormer construction at 728 Fair Street.
Before I speak, I'm checking to see if anyone's here to represent this item.
No, not here. We'll just move on to the next one.
Is there anyone here to represent 728 Fair Street?
Okay. Well, then we've got the next one.
You have the option, I understand, I may consult with Ms. Fincher here. I think you do have the option to consider the item, but it is your option to defer if the applicant is not here to answer any questions you have. So you may want to take action on it.
Okay, so we can defer or take action. That's what you're telling me.
Yes.
All right. Since the applicant's not here, is there a motion to defer or to approve the application or to deny it?
I can certainly give my recommendation if you choose to hear the item before
Okay.
you make a vote on that.
Okay, all right.
But I just wanted to let you know that you do have the option either way.
I would make the motion to defer since the applicant is not here.
All right, to the September voting meeting.
And I would second.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Ken, or Lisa? We'll give Lisa credit. All right, then, any discussion on deferral? All in favor of the deferral, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. We've got the next, the applicant for the next one is the same.
Same.
So,
Is there anyone here present to represent item number 5, consideration of alterations, specifically window repair and replacement at 238 Public Square?
all right, is there a motion on that one then?
I'll move to defer
Thank
to the
you,
next
Mr.
voting
Mann.
meeting.
There's a second to that.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Worthington. All right, all in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've got, the next one is consideration of partial demolition principal, addition principal, dormer and siding alterations principal, and new construction accessory at 111 Winslow Road, MK Studio applicant.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a series of work at the property. I do have the existing building projected on the screen for your viewing. The request is to remove an existing addition at the rear and left side of the structure. You can see that in these photographs here. This part of this area and part of this area here. The applicant is also proposing to construct a new side and rear addition to the building in lieu of the existing non-historic addition to alter some elements of the existing building, namely by means of adding the addition. So the proposal would alter the dormer that's on the left side of the building, which you can't see in this photograph. And then also change the siding elements at the rear. Portions of this addition are proposed to remain, but the applicant would like to change from a vertical board lap to a horizontal lap. And the applicant would also like to construct a 1.5-story accessory structure at the rear and right side of the property, which is proposed to be attached to the house via covered breezeway. The applicant appeared before the DRC at its July meeting to discuss the proposal. So there are a number of things on this application. There's one recommendation by staff, so I will just briefly cover each item unless you provide
Go ahead.
alternative guidance. Okay. So the partial demolition is limited to addition at the rear of the property. You can see that namely here. It's an addition that we don't know the exact date. It appears to be constructed around the 70s or 80s. It's not consequential to the house itself or the historic district if removed due to its date and the way it was constructed, which isn't exactly in keeping with how the guidelines would recommend additions to be constructed now. The addition is proposed to be close to that same area. I'm going to kind of zoom ahead here. Just a moment. I believe it's here. The addition would sort of include the area that an existing addition is located in and tie back into the house in more of a meaningful way. The proposed addition is offset from the historic building's left facade by about 3 feet. So you can see that here. So you can see where the addition starts and the existing is located. It ties into the building in sort of an L shape because of the porch. So you can see it's an upside down L located in the rear and left side. The materials are compatible with the historic structure. The use of lap siding is appropriate. And changes to the existing at the rear here to lap siding are appropriate as well. That would create a more visual cohesion with the addition in accordance with the recommendations of the design review from July. It appears the ceiling height, however, on this addition is higher than that of the existing historic addition, and because of that, it causes negative consequence to the existing house. I'm going to move ahead here to the left side of the house so you can see what I'm talking about specifically. So as you can see, what's on top is existing conditions, and what is proposed is at the bottom. Because of the increase in ceiling height on the addition, it's proposed to tie into the existing roof line in such a way that it is cutting off this dormer, and the applicant's proposing to change the shape and change the fenestration pattern on that dormer. The guidelines do recommend against this. The guidelines recommend that historic roof shapes and their configurations be preserved and maintained. So this interaction of the proposed addition with the existing dormer is not appropriate and is not in keeping with the intent of the guidelines. There were some comments by the design review committee and staff at the July meeting related to the initial design, concerned specifically with foundation levels, the breezeway connection between the house and the garage, and the applicant has revised those proposed designs to incorporate the recommendations, which was to lower the foundation level at the rear, so it's more in keeping with what is acceptable historically as a precedent. The applicant has done that here. It is a little higher on the porch, but the porch is inset from this corner, so it will not be as visible from street view. The applicant also changed the breezeway connection to lower it so that it's tying into a more historically appropriate place. The size of the proposed addition, which is inclusive of the enclosed areas, the covered porch area, and the breezeway, measures 55.6%, which is not in keeping with the guidelines. The guidelines recommend that additions be measured no more than half of the original building. Now, I wanted to clarify that if the breezeway is considered part of the garage and not part of the addition, then the addition measures 50.2%, which is in keeping with the guidelines. So because the breezeway is not really part of the house and not really part of the garage, it would be staff's interpretation that the addition proposed size is consistent with the guidelines and that the breezeway is, if the breezeway is the reason that the overage exists, that it's not as consequential. As for the garage, I'm going to move ahead to talk about it specifically. You can see the front and rear elevations proposed here. The rear of the house is where, this is where the breezeway ties in. The guidelines recommend that accessory structures be constructed in traditional locations and be generally subordinate to the house in size, in height, in mass, and intricacy. The guidelines also recommend that they be designed to be consistent with the context of the principal structures they serve. Architectural details should complement rather than detract from the character of that principal structure. With the proposed accessory structure, it is located at the rear of the property, and using the breezeway connector is tucked in behind the house, so it's not as visible from street view, so that is consistent with the guidelines. The design of the accessory structure, however, is not entirely consistent with the recommendations of the guidelines, because while it does feature similar architectural detailing and style as the house, the large dormers are not visually subordinate. The scale and size of this structure may be less visually subordinate to the house as designed. And to elaborate on that more, it appears that the garage is the same height as the house, and as a 1.5-story house, largely perceived as a 1-story from street view, it is not anticipated necessarily that the garage be so much shorter than the house, but the placement of these large dormers on the front exaggerate the scale of the house, which is not something that the house does. These dormers appear to be larger than the dormers on the house. Because the dormers on the house are tucked behind the ridge line and are harder to see from the street, it may be that this accessory structure's dormers exaggerate a scale relationship that's not appropriate. The rear elevation features a larger shed dormer, as you can see here. The applicant's utilizing minimal windows on that rear facade, which is suggested by staff because the zoning ordinance does recommend, or require rather, that the transitional features regulations be met for accessory structure of this size, which would limit or protect privacy for the neighboring rear house and yard. The lot coverage cumulatively with the addition, the breezeway, the garage is at 33.7%, which is consistent with the guidelines, which recommend no more than 35%. So it is recommended that the commission approve the proposal, but with some conditions. The conditions being that this right the left facade dormer be preserved and maintained. I think on my staff report I might have accidentally put right dormer, and I apologize for that. I'm going to go back to these elevations and be very specific. The interaction of the proposed addition with this existing roof line is not supported by the guidelines and is not recommended that the commission approve as presented. The application is recommended to be approved with the condition that this roof line be adjusted for a lower ceiling height so that the ceiling does not tie into this dormer and allows the existing dormer to be preserved and maintained in place as it currently is configured. This alteration must be considered by staff prior to issuance of a building permit. And if staff determines that the alteration cannot be achieved without significant alteration to the overall design, the roof shape, the footprint of the structure, that be returned to the commission for review and approval. The applicant must also scale down the size of the dormers on the garage for better consistency with the guidelines. The alteration must be considered by staff prior to issuance of a building permit. And again, if staff finds that the alteration causes significant changes to that are consequential to the overall design, to the roof shape, to the footprint of the building, that this too be returned to the commission for review and approval. A standard condition would be that all new windows have a historic profile and dimension and consist of either wood or a composite material with the appearance of wood, and that those two be approved by staff for compliance with those guidelines prior to issuance of a building permit. And additionally, the application must meet all the other requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department. Any changes to plans approved by the commission, if not otherwise noted in these conditions, must be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to moving forward. And I did want to note specifically that it's recommended that the applicant ensure that this application meet all accessory structure requirements in sections 5.2.7 before submitting for a building permit, which is specific to accessory dwellings, because the size of the structure will require that it meet those regulations before being approved. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicants, please come and comment on the application.
Hello, everyone. Michael Katsidis with MK Studio. Amanda, thank you so much. Let's kind of address some of the items that we have revised already and have been approved, I guess. The lowering of the foundation water table, the change of the lap siding, the change on the breezeway. One other item that I like to kind of pay, if you can move to the front elevations. And scroll up, no. Yeah, right there, and zoom out. You can kind of see the detached garage right there. It is a little, it's you can see partial, the twin dormer. You can see partial view of that. Obviously, the one-car garage. The dormer to the left side of that dormer, you won't be able to see it because it's, again, behind the structure. The other item on the east side or the left side of the dormer, again, that dormer is currently not visible because of the tree and of the main ridge line of the gable. But to solve that, rather than, I'm going to point to this, there's a Cricut, well, maybe I can point to it. There's a Cricut right there running. We can lower that, and we can create a window well, so we can flatten that roof to keep those windows intact without lowering the ceiling height in the building itself.
So just as a point of clarity, so you can, by lowering what you just got through saying, you can keep the windows in the existing dormer?
Correct.
Okay, I just want
Correct.
to make sure before we get into questions.
Yes, we can keep that. Of course, it's going to be more expensive, obviously, because we'll have to create a window well with copper lining, with a low slope. It's not totally flat, but it has some slope to it. So we can keep that behind that hip line of the new addition. I think that was all major comments.
Okay. Amanda, you had some videos that we're going to show?
I have some videos that the property owner had asked that we show.
Okay.
I can pull those up right now.
You can see more of the screened-in porch comes over to the side of the house where this big tree is. Again, this side has screened-in porch and the addition. It's all just that siding. And then you get over here to the original part of the house, which
You
is
can
stone.
pause it right there.
When they built the addition, they added this little alcove, and it does nothing.
So the dormers are right above here in this little alcove there. they're barely visible from the street or from that side view.
I can certainly pull up the Google Street View if that's helpful for you once you're deliberating.
Yeah, that's,
Collect water, and puts water under the foundation. So you've got rock and everything right here. So we are proposing to enclose this. Basically just continue along from this stone wall, just back to that. That should redo the, of course, not redo the roof line, but connect it to where the water, there will no longer be a place for the water to go, except the gutters.
Okay, can you pause it? That offset that you saw there between the existing stone structure and the 1970s, 80s addition is 5 feet. We are proposing to make it 3 feet rather than 5. We're trying to stay away from the tree as well. And that's why.
Here's a picture of the side of 111 Winslow. That dormer up there, we're going to redo it. Not sure exactly about the plans yet, but horizontal boarding and probably just case it in, make it look very nice. That door will be going away and getting replaced with a window. And here's the back lot. That parking pad to about that shed over there will be the garage addition with the apartment above it. There was some note about the breezeway, so it'll go from roughly that corner of the parking pad to probably that walkway right there. So that could be very short, because where that walkway is, the end of that will be roughly about the size of the porch, I believe. So it won't be very long at all. As far as the build out of the floor to the patio is probably right above this junction box, probably about right there. I'll step away from that so you can kind of see the height. That's about where the current flooring is. So that's how high that brick siding will be. And then you go over here, and this is all the part we're talking about tearing down. All the way from, this is just a screened-in patio to the addition right here. And we're going to enclose this and make it part of the house. Make that stone wall actually part of the interior of that hallway there, and redo this whole part for the master bed. It won't come out quite as far as the screened-in porch.
That's it, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Would you mind opening Google, the Google Maps? Oh, if they wish.
The applicants asked me to pull up Street View. Would you like me to do that?
The street view, yeah, that'd be great. I think that's important.
So this is
yeah.
the street here as you're approaching. You can see the addition here, an existing house.
So you can see that dormer. Would you mind going further up on Franklin Road?
On Franklin Road?
Towards Franklin.
Okay, so here's the location, viewing the right side. And then Mr. Casadas asked me to come up this way. You see the dormer through there.
Yeah, stop it in front of the house, Amanda, so we look straight back.
Sure.
And up the driveway. There, you're getting one more, there you go, stop. Okay.
And just to clarify, this garage used to belong to this house. There has been a subdivision of the property that removes this structure from the lot that we're discussing today. So this garage is not part of this property.
Right, and that's marked in our information. Okay, Michael, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? Then, commissioners, I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposal.
Thank you, Ken.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second?
Second?
Lisa, is that?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, is that with staff comments?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there, Nick?
Yeah, Amanda, can I have a clarification question on
Sure.
the size? We were talking about that the proposed addition measures 55.6% of the historic structure, but if we make the breezeway part of the ancillary structure, then it's only 50.2.
Yes.
So is it, just to make sure I understand, the staff's interpretation is that the breezeway is in fact part of the accessory structure?
That is typically the means by which staff reviews breezeways. It is not something that's specifically called out within our design guidelines, so the commission can use its discretion on that. The way that the addition's proposed, it feels like its own unit, and then there's the breezeway, then the garage, and so it to staff doesn't feel like it's integral to the addition. So if the commission chooses to follow staff's recommendation, it would be part of that accessory structure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I do agree with that interpretation. So I would consider this to be the 50.2%.
And we round up and down.
Other
Ish.
comments? Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, the height of the accessory structure, does that land fall
Yes, and that's why I
down?
wanted to.
That's what I thought,
wanted
yeah.
to show that
Yeah,
view right there because
That's
it
what I
does,
think.
I think it does slope back.
down, yeah.
Somebody, Michael, you might be able to comment on that.
Yeah, the driveway slopes up.
Yes, so, but the land slopes back a little bit.
It flattens out right there at the motor court.
Well, what will the perception of the height of the accessory structure be to the historic home?
From the street,
Yes, sir. Or
looking.
from the side, either. I mean, if you get on around,
Right.
I don't know if
ridge-
you'll see it.
The ridge of the accessory building is at the same exact level as the main structure. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
No, but-
Generally speaking, the accessory structure has been just a bit below the historic home. Is that achievable?
We can lower it a degree.
Well, I would offer that as an amendment.
And to what, you have a percentage or?
I would say 6
foot-
inches to get it just,
6 inches?
because the land doesn't slope down.
That's probably an eighth of a slope, an eighth of an inch to 12 inches.
And that's achievable.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It does slope.
Mr. Anderson?
You go up the driveway, it flattens when your house comes, and you get to the back driveway, it does start to go down.
Good, and that will help too. So I think between those two things and long-term, the visibility of it if the other lots are built on. But we have generally done that.
Okay, so do you want to?
I made that as an amendment.
All right, and the
6
amendment-
6
inches?
inches.
The amendment is.
6
to lower it
inches.
6 inches,
Mhm.
and then there was another piece of that, or was it? Or is there a second to that? Lower the height of the accessory 6 inches.
I'll second that.
And, okay.
The ridge line.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarification, if we lower it 6 inches, will it be below the main structure?
Yes.
That's what Michael just said.
And that is a excellent point to make, but it is required by the zoning ordinance that the accessory structure be no taller than the house, and I believe it might say even shorter. So with the grade I felt that the grade flattened out, so it was about the same. So lowering it by a matter of 6 inches may be easier for the applicant to achieve a building permit.
Okay, all right, then I think we're squared. Any other discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, amendment passes. Then we're back to the main motion as amended. Any comments, further comments on that?
Just a question for the applicant, that the understanding of scaling down the size of the dormers on the front of the proposed accessory structure is something that you're amenable to and that you'll be reviewing with staff?
That's in the conditions, Lisa.
It is?
Yeah.
But I'm just clarifying, I guess it's not very specific in terms of how much to scale down, but you do intend to?
We can decrease the window sizes to I guess the minimum size to meet egress for that bedroom. That's a bedroom up there. So we can create like a 2.8, 5.2 window that meets egress. Or if we go to a casement, well, we won't go to a casement, that wouldn't meet the architectural elements of the existing house. So we can reduce the size of the window and to decrease the dormer size.
Okay. Well, and I feel comfortable with staff reviewing that, the determination of how much to reduce the size. I just wanted to make sure that was something that you were amenable to. So.
Yeah, the only issue on the left dormer, that is a habitable space, and by decreasing that, we're going to limit the square footage of that usable space in there. That's a living area. So that might be a little more difficult to do. On the right dormer, the right twin dormer, I can definitely make that smaller. But the left, we're just going to have to work on.
But the right dormer on the house was not, I don't think
He's speaking about the dormers on the garage.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry, all right.
Yes.
The condition would be
dormers.
that both of these dormers on the garage be scaled down. That's what staff will be looking for to meet the
Okay,
condition of
all right.
approval.
All right, is there anything else then? Any other questions?
And just to further clarify, as Ms. Marquardt did with this, that is an understanding with the condition of approval that the dormer would need to be left undisturbed on the left side of the house.
For the existing house, yes.
Yes.
Okay, any other comments? No other comments? Then, all in favor of the motion to, as amended, please raise your hand. None opposed, so it's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right,
I'd make, we voted, but I just want to make one comment. You all, there are so many houses in Franklin that have that little bitty piece between the addition. Somebody in town ran all over it and did that. And it's so weird.
There are a lot of those.
Uh-huh.
They are spike strips for mowing, as I call them.
Okay, we're ready for item 7, which is consideration of alteration entrances, windows, awnings at 236 2nd Avenue South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll allow a moment for everyone to get situated. Okay, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for alterations at the subject property 236 2nd Avenue South. The alterations include alterations to a series of entrances, windows, and awnings on both the historic and non-historic portions of the building. A majority of the proposed alterations are specific to the non-historic addition. There are a series of photographs here that help relay that. For context, this is the street view on the right side. There has been a substantial addition approved in the past for this historic structure, and so it starts at the cream-colored areas and goes back pretty significantly. The photos on all along across the top and these two down below are of the left side of that addition. You can see on this top left photograph, this is the historic structure and where the addition started. A majority of the proposed alterations are on that non-historic addition and chiefly on that left side that you see in these photographs. Or non-contributing elements to a site, meaning they're not historic. They're not determined to add historic or architectural value for the period of significance currently defined for the historic district. In the case of proposed alterations to non-contributing elements, the alterations are reviewed in light of the guidelines, specifically in relation to how those alterations would impact the character of not only the house itself, but also the district and surrounding structures. So as a brief overview of the left side alterations, there's some existing double doors located here. The applicant is proposing to replace, I'm sorry, there's just a moment. Okay, so there's a existing set of double doors and then there's a single door. And the applicant's proposing to take the single door and make it into double doors at the painted brick part of the addition. So here's double doors here, they exist. And then there's a single door here, and the applicant would like to create a double door. Its replacement with double glass doors is mostly consistent with the guidelines, as the guidelines state that new entrances would not, should not be added to primary or readily visible secondary elevations. And while this location is visible from the street, the rhythm and spacing is typical, and it wouldn't adversely impact the character of the historic house or the overall district. The applicant's also proposing to add 4 sets of aluminum garage door units, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'd be on either side of those double doors. The guidelines recommend that new windows have historic profile and dimensions, that they use true or simulated divided light, and have single or double hung appearance. The placement of 4 aluminum garage window door units along the left elevation is not appropriate. The locations are visible from the street, and the fenestration pattern is modern. It's typical of an accessory structure or an industrial structure, and it's contrary to the rhythm and spacing of the window and door openings on the attached historic house. Further, it's contrary to the context of the surrounding district. There is a covered entrance element currently on the building, as you can see here. The applicant's proposing to, there's 2 of them, one here and one here. The applicant's proposing to remove those elements as they are not historic and to replace those with metal awnings that cover the span of the proposed double pedestrian doors and those garage doors. The proposal to remove the existing elements is appropriate. They're not historic. It's not consequential to the building or the district to remove those elements. However, the proposal to add the metal awnings is not consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines recommend that residential forms use awnings that are duck canvas, cotton, polyester blends with or without acrylic treatments, and that those awnings be placed over the openings they serve specifically. The existing covered elements are more appropriate than the metal awnings, as they are indicative of similar features on historic residential buildings in both style and material. Now moving over to the right side, it's kind of difficult to have this discussion without first reviewing the right side photograph first. I'm going to zoom in on that. This is existing conditions. As you can see, there's the historic building. There is a window here, a double hung window, 1/1. And then the addition starts, a brick addition was painted. And you see there's two paired windows there. Now the applicant's rendering, demonstrates an alteration to both the addition and to the existing historic structure by changing out the existing paired windows with what they're calling clear story windows, which are situated above the typical rhythm and spacing of fenestration on this building and nearby buildings, and then also adding an entrance element which appears to kind of fall within that space between both the historic and the non-historic portions of the building. The proposed fenestration pattern is not characteristic of the house, it's not characteristic of the surrounding district. The removal of the window on here, however, is appropriate. It's just the proposed pattern is not compatible with the surrounding district. The guidelines recommend that new windows be placed on lesser visible elevations and that they should have historic profile and dimension. The proposed windows are not in line with the existing window headers and sills and offer a rhythm that's atypical of the house. And then as for the new entrance, that modification of the existing historic building is not consistent with the guidelines. The guidelines would recommend that new entrance openings be placed on non-visible elevations, specifically not on principal and not on readily visible secondary elevations. This is a highly visible elevation from the street view. So with that, while there are some portions of the application that are consistent with the guidelines, the proposed alterations consist of a comprehensive design that's not consistent with the recommendations. While alterations to non-contributing elements such as this addition may be appropriate, the alterations again should reinforce the character of the district and should reinforce the character of the surrounding structures, including this historic house on which the addition is situated. So it is recommended that the application be denied, with notes that it is recommended that the applicant utilize elements such as paired French doors to offer more flexibility of indoor and outdoor space in lieu of the garage doors. And it is recommended that the applicant attend an upcoming design review committee meeting, as previously recommended to the applicant, to explore options for achieving the desired flexibility in a manner that is more consistent with the building's residential character. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please comment on this application?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Trent Sullivan, Taylor Slay, Lines, Inc.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your name, please?
Trent Sullivan.
Okay, Trent, thank you.
Taylor Slay.
Right.
We were unaware that any alterations that were being requested were being made to any historic portion of the building. So in this rendering, I think where that's indicated, we probably need to come back with another exhibit of what that's supposed to look like, but it's not our understanding that we are going to ask for any modifications or alterations to the historic part of the structure.
I was just reviewing what was presented.
Yeah, I understand.
I understand.
I understand.
I mean,
This is
we've
a
got-
This is a Photoshop, piece together the best that you can. It's not a, it's obviously not a built environment there. So it's our understanding that what we're requesting modifications to are all to a portion of the building that is really not historic in any sort of way other than the time in which it was built. So this is a commercial property. To make a commercial property form and function in a residential fashion is difficult. And some of the things that you see that we're requesting are requirements that are being placed upon the church in order to ingress and egress the building. So, for example, the pair of double doors that are being added that have to be replaced because there's not simply enough exit for people to exit that building once it is occupied at the capacity for a worship service would have to be a pair of double doors. And so a lot of the things that you're seeing here are more about form and function of good design so that when the occupants are in that building, they can enjoy that space from the inside, which I know is contrary to what we are looking at on the outside. But an example with those clerestory windows, if you can imagine there's going to be a classroom on the other side of that, and you're going to have marker boards, and you're going to have display boards. And all of those are going to be put in front of a window if the window is down lower. So the design to have clerestory windows above is to let natural light into a classroom, but still be able to utilize the space inside. And so what we're asking is that you consider that this is a commercial building. The front portion of the historic home is being preserved, and we're not asking to make any modifications to it. And if anything, we'd like you to consider recommendation number 2, which has us bring this final proposal back to you after it's been approved by the city for a permit.
May I clarify?
Yeah, please.
There is a single recommendation for denial, and I did want to note that any application, if issued approval tonight by the Historic Zoning Commission, would need to meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to a building permit being issued. Part of a building permit being issued is that any applicable approvals would need to be taken care of prior to that. So the Historic Zoning Commission would need to approve any exterior alterations before a building permit could be issued on this property, unless there is some sort of a temporary certificate of occupancy granted, but in accordance with the applicant's comments, that may not be able to be the case if there are certain egress floats that need to be met. I also want to clarify that it is appropriate to add, make that single door into a double door, certainly. And if that commission wants to approve that this evening, it's certainly the commission's purview to be able to do so. It's just staff has chosen to recommend denial holistically because it appears that one single element of the plan being approved is problematic to all the proposed alterations. It just doesn't work for the applicant to be able to do this partially.
Okay. Trent, do you have any other comments?
No, sir.
Well, all right. Are there any citizens which comment on this application? Yes, sir. Would you please come to the podium and identify yourself?
My name is Sean Clark. I'm the pastor of the church.
Welcome.
Thank y'all so much for allowing me to be here tonight and speak with you guys. I just want to point of clarification, if I could have from you, Amanda.
Sure.
So you were stating that in order to get a building permit to start forward, we would need y'all to say yes to this tonight, correct?
At some point.
At some point.
At some point,
The
yeah.
building permit cannot be issued prior to issuance of a certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, we want to work with, obviously, the design committee, make sure we do it correctly and make sure it appeals to the neighborhood. And so whatever we need to do for egress, if that's the initial deal, to approve that, to move forward so that we can get our interior moving forward, that would be an amazing step to take.
There is currently a building permit being considered for interior only because the full building permit was applied for and failed based on not having a certificate of appropriateness. So currently there's one being reviewed that only allows for the interior alterations, and they would need to come back forward for any exterior alterations. At that point, that the initial building permit was declined, it was relayed to the architect that exterior alterations require historic zoning approval and that the design review committee would be an excellent option. The applicant declined DRC at that time, but it is recommended that the applicant consider coming forward to talk through some of these alterations, unless approved tonight by the commission.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Are there any, did you have any other comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we need to go ahead from, are there any other citizens who wish to comment on the application? Anybody else? Okay, thanks. We're ready for a commission to.
Mr. Chair, since this lot seems to fall into me tonight, I move that we defer to the next voting meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission and invite the applicant to Design Review Committee next week.
Next Monday, yeah.
And I would second that.
All right, any discussion on the deferral request?
Well, I would just say that this function, one time, the reason we got such a big addition, before there was historic zoning, it was a print shop, and a large addition was built, and then it became an antique place, and a larger addition was built. I think what's done to this oversized addition is important. It's an important street in Franklin and deserves, I think, a conversation.
Very good. Any other comments? Then we've got a motion made and seconded for deferral to the September voting meeting.
So can I-
With a suggestion that that the applicant come next Monday to design review. Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to learn as well, so if you'll pardon me. I'm trying to learn the process because I know I'm working both with the city and with the Historic Commission. So
Yeah.
in working with both, I just want to make sure I understand the process by which I'm going to. We've applied for an interior building permit, and that's on hold right now, correct? Am I correct?
No,
It's
that
not
is not on
okay.
hold. The initial application was for a full building permit with
I got you.
exterior.
Okay.
And that was failed because it did not meet all the requirements of the city. So what my suggestion was is to move forward with interior.
interior.
So
Gotcha. All right,
you
I'm
can
good.
move,
The
as long as
interior's
that's
fine.
approved, you're good.
I'm just-
As you see tonight, we have enough going on.
Yes,
with
sir.
this exterior.
I got you. All right, I'm good to go.
So that should be reviewed right now.
Yeah.
So as long as that's approved, you're more than welcome to continue moving forward on interior.
Sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
All right,
Yeah.
we've got a motion to defer that's been made and seconded. No conversation. All in favor of the deferral, then please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that's unanimous, Amanda.
Okay, and I will go ahead and if the architect's okay with that, I'll go ahead and add you guys to the Monday informal discussion meeting. That'll be,
That's fine. I want to make clear that we didn't object to coming to that. It was the process and the timeliness of trying to get our other application in so that they can function and continue to operate. So we didn't have the time to move forward.
I understand. So it is on the 16th at 4 o'clock. I'll send you some information on that. I don't have your contact information, but I do have Taylor, so I'll send it to Taylor. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, we're to item number 8, consideration of addition, accessory, and new construction accessory at 334 Franklin Road. Gamble Design Collaborative, applicant. Amanda.
Okay, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for an addition to an accessory structure and the construction of a new accessory structure at 334 Franklin Road, which we all know as Wyatt Hall. Wyatt Hall is a circa 1805 building that's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. I think I pulled up the right one. No, just a moment. Oh, yes. Yes, I have the right one. Okay. The city staff has been working with the applicant to address some outstanding zoning issues on the property. And as part of that process, the Historic Zoning Commission is being asked to consider the proposal for issuance of a certificate of appropriateness in light of all applicable guidelines. The applicant hosted a site visit to the subject property on June 23rd, and the applicant also appeared before the Design Review Committee in its regular in-person City Hall meeting at its July 19th meeting. So I've broken this into 2 recommendations for the commission to consider tonight. The first portion of the application is a request for the construction of an addition onto an existing log cabin on the property. Just to clarify, for those in the room, the addition's already been constructed, and the request for a certificate of appropriateness is retroactive. The addition is to a log cabin. The log cabin is a circa 19th century log cabin that was relocated to this site during the 1950s. It's a historic log cabin that was situated across the street, actually, across Franklin Road, and it is located in relation to the house with its front facade facing the back of Wyatt Hall. So you can see on the screen here, this is the existing log cabin. The addition consists of this side single-story left element, a single-story rear quote-unquote connector, and then it also consists of a 1.5-story log cabin located here, the latter of which was relocated and constructed on the site from the vicinity of the town of Lewisburg. Other additions have been constructed, such as this octagonal portion and its connector to the building, but those were believed to have been established prior to the historic district's establishment here. So for the consideration tonight, it's this portion, a portion of this rear connector, and this addition to this log cabin. The additions are clearly differentiated from the historic form in that they incorporate massing breaks, such as insets and offsets, roof breaks, material changes. The roof shapes and materials are compatible with the roof structure's shape of the historic structure and with its overall form. The applicant's calculations, however, indicate that the footprint of these proposed additions measures approximately 1,200 square feet, or over 1,000% of the existing structure. As such, the addition size is not consistent with the guidelines, which recommend that additions be limited to no more than half the footprint of the original structure. The materials of the proposed additions are all labeled on the application. I'll just go to the photographs and won't necessarily call all of those out, but they are consistent with the recommendations in the guidelines. Exact window specifications have not been provided, but they appear to have consistency and profile, material, dimension with the existing windows. Now I'm moving on to the new garage. There is a portion of the property that would be behind that log cabin we just discussed toward the north side and closer to the railroad tracks where this building was constructed. This is a single-story metal building. You can see that the part that faces toward Franklin Road has a slate siding on it as the entrance location. The guidelines recommend that accessory structures be constructed in traditional locations and be designed to be visually subordinate in placement, size, massing, and intricacy to the respective principal structures. The location of this accessory structure is consistent with the guidelines. The design of the proposed accessory structure also conforms to the guidelines in that it's compatible, or it is not, rather, as it's not compatible with the detailing and scaling of the principal structure. The materials are not consistent, is what I mean specifically, and that it is a vertical ribbed metal. The lean-to portion of the structure features vertical wood siding, however, which is appropriate. Just to clarify, this is a vertical ribbed metal. The elevation set continues to show the vertical ribbed metal with the exception of that slate siding on the left elevation or front facade of the entrance point. There is a vertical wood on this lean-to, which is recessed pretty far back from that front elevation. At the Design Review Committee site visit, the applicant had relayed interest in replacing or adding a veneer, some sort of a siding over the vertical rib board in order to be more consistent with the recommendations of the guidelines. And it's not indicated on the plan set that that's any longer the case. However, it is a requirement of the Franklin zoning ordinance that materials be consistent with the principal structures. And so a metal would not be something that could be supported by the zoning ordinance for a building permit. With that, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission approve the accessory structure, new construction, what you see on the screen here, and that the metal siding must be clad with either a vertical board siding, a lap siding. It could also be clad with slate shake siding as shown on the front elevation here. To meet applicable guidelines and the zoning ordinance requirements, and that the application must meet all other requirements of the City of Franklin prior to issuance of a building permit, and that any changes to the plan as you see tonight be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to moving forward. As for the addition to the log cabin, it is recommended that the Commission deny that, as the guidelines recommend that additions measure no more than 50% of the footprint of any building. The proposal far exceeds the recommendations of the guidelines as far as footprint size. If issued a COA, however, the application must meet all other requirements of the City of Franklin prior to issuance of a building permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please comment on the application?
Hello, my name is Greg Eagle, and representing the applicant, the Woodies tonight. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, but I've asked Mike Hathaway if he wouldn't mind giving a brief presentation on the Woodies property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Mike Hathaway, 906 Studio Architects. Appreciate y'all's time. Amanda, do you have the video that we created? I'd love to quickly walk you through again to give you a sense about the site. This is obviously a unique situation, property that's 11 plus acres of land. And this is a view as you enter into from the main drive. You can see the main house, a beautiful home, approximately 25 feet in height. You are walking around, getting closer to Franklin Road, heading toward the original or the existing garage building. You can see they've done an amazing job of landscaping the site and the beautiful stone walls that have been restored. As you enter into the courtyard that's behind the house, this is when you come into contact with the original log cabin to your left as we run through the shrubs and make a turn to the left. So as you go through the house, that's the view of the original log cabin. You can imagine how dense it is on the site. It's also as dense from Franklin Road. You've probably driven by there, as I have several times, and you really don't see the house or anything, or you see the house, but you don't see all the accessory structures at all. So there's the log cabin, beautiful, beautiful structure.
That's smokehouse.
This is smokehouse, yes, ma'am. This is the second part of the video. You're going to walk by the original log cabin and structure next to it, and we're going to go to the side that goes by the new log cabin and the shed that we're talking about in the rear. First time I met Dr. Woody, he reminded me of Bill Powell. He had a great sense of design, even for not being a design professional or even a construction professional. Quality additions, quality work, beautiful work. That's an existing chicken coop, I believe. Is the dog run? There in between, and then back behind is the shed that we're talking about that's metal with a wood addition. And I'll say part of the reason why we changed it back to metal, that we originally had wood as a veneer in DRC, it was discussed that metal seemed to be appropriate for a structure within a farm setting, so that's why we changed it back to metal. This is the kitchen addition that was done on the original log cabin. Beautiful slate siding. And then you can get a glimpse to the left of the new log cabin that was beautifully renovated and added to a connector in between them. Again, it's all really well done. Beautiful structure. And the interiors is as good or better. If you get a chance to go do a tour inside, it's amazing. And that's, again, the shed in the back with the slate veneer. Thank you, Amanda. So we appreciate the recommendations. I understand that's what's necessary because of what the ordinance and your guidelines say. But we believe with the size of the site, the condition of what's been done and the materials that have been used and the quality of the construction, that we believe it's an appropriate structure and should be saved and allowed to maintain. Also relative to the the steel structure in the back that's the shed. Again, we believe that it is an agri-type material, and we'd like for that to stay as well. But should you decide, or should we not be allowed to, because of the zoning ordinance allowed to do that, then we're welcome to have you guys make a condition to the approval if you consider it to be a wood, board and batten type material.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any citizens who wish to comment on this application? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Beverly Berger. I'm a citizen of Franklin, live at 1373 Liberty Pike. I'm also serve as an alderman, the Board of Franklin Mayor and Alderman. I've had the great privilege to walk this property, the great privilege to go inside these buildings, every one of them. I have lived all over the world. I have lived in many unique, beautiful places. I've seen gorgeous art. I've seen wonderful architecture. I had the privilege to live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and be very much a part of things going on at the University of Virginia and Monticello. When I saw this home, these properties associated, I was really taken back, and I had to go and read about it and learn about it. When I ran for Franklin Alderman in 2005, people here were really worried about me. They didn't know me at all. I moved here in 2003. But I fell in love with Franklin years ago when I used to come visit here often. And they wanted to know who I was. And there were a lot of things happening in Franklin that relate now to my role as alderman and my position even as a citizen. We had a lot of historic areas in danger. We had a lot of historic homes in danger. There were things happening in this town that needed to be preserved. And so people finally learned that I was not someone who was going to discard that easily. I'm a lover of history. I'm a lover of architecture. And I looked at this place, and although it is where it is right now and how it got here, to move the structure or disassemble the structure of this addition to this log cabin would utterly destroy it. It's appropriate where it is with 10 acres. It has superb craftsmanship. I have not seen much like this in my lifetime. Dr. Woody must be a genius because everything is so perfected. To preserve this property is so important. It's very important. It's important as a piece of incredible history, art, and design. Is breathtaking. To me, it's the Monticello of Franklin. And I just ask you to be very careful with your decision here tonight to protect this beautiful piece. The craftsmanship is out of this world, amazing. And it's a great place to preserve for Franklin for years and years to come, and I hope something great will happen to this property in the future to be preserved forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berger. Any other citizens which comment on the application? If not, let's do two motions on this. One on the addition to the accessory, the first one, and then we'll do the second one, which is the new construction. So is there a motion on the addition to the accessory, the log cabin accessory structure?
I'll make a motion, Chair. I move to approve issuance of a retroactive certificate of appropriateness for the addition.
Be addition to the log cabin?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Discussion.
I just wanted to give a reason for the motion. I wanted to give
Yes, please.
a reason for the
A reason
motion.
for, thank you.
Yeah. And that is that I agree with what was presented today and demonstrated in the video as well, that this is just a very unique combination of architecture and design that I imagine someday may become a bit of an attraction for this area. So with that, it's a unique scenario, different from our usual certificate of appropriateness applications, and for that reason, I made the motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, discussion, any comments, any additional comments?
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to say the reason for my second has to do more with historic preservation. Since I'm a preservationist, to destroy or move the cabin, the historic structure would demolish and destroy it. So that's the reason I have to support it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
The only comment I would say is, I think it would be fantastic if we could have some signage that kind of told the story. So that's something that would be optional for the property owner, I'm just suggesting. But the fact that one log place was moved there, and then another one was moved out of the way of a bulldozer, I do think tells a story of
Okay.
early Tennessee history, pieces that we're losing.
Nick, you got a comment?
I do. More of a question, perhaps for the applicant. When was the addition added onto the log cabin? Sorry, I can't quite follow that from the staff report.
Sure, the addition was added approximately 2016.
Okay. What was the reason it didn't go through historic zoning at that time? Do we know?
The process was not followed.
Okay.
Anything else? Ready to vote? Then all in favor of the motion to approve the addition to the log cabin as it currently sits, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Nick, opposed?
I'd like to kind of say why.
Yes.
I'm torn. I am struggling over, would we have approved this in 2016? And I don't know, and I'm very concerned about setting a precedent that build it, particularly on this important piece of property, and you build it really well, and we'll approve it retroactively. That concerns me very much. So that's why I voted no.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, it's not ideal.
No, it's not ideal.
No.
It's not. But it is, and I think what Brian just got through saying is probably the reason I would, that I support this. It's there. It's history added to history, and it's telling a story. And I think that's important. Plus the fact, from a visibility, you don't see this from Franklin Road. We saw that when we walked the site. And the video tells that story pretty good too, but you do not see any of this from Franklin Road and little of White Hall.
But
So-
another part of that is it's such an important place that if it took away from Wyatt Hall and being able to visually look at Wyatt Hall, that would make a huge difference to me.
Okay, now we're to the new construction of the accessory, the metal siding accessory building. So is there a motion on that?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. I move to approve the accessory structure with the conditions outlined.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Is there a second?
I second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Any comments?
The comment I would have, I would prefer to see horizontal siding. I think it's more typical of this area, and it would give less competition to the site. So I would propose an amendment that the siding added be horizontal lap siding.
Is there a second to Mary's amendment?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Ken. Any comments on horizontal siding? Okay, all in favor of the amendment to add horizontal siding to the metal side structure, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. All right, we're back to the main motion then. Any other discussion on the main motion? Okay, ready to vote. Then all in,
And I'm sorry, when was this bill, this is retroactive again, correct?
Yeah, 2017.
27, so same situation. Understand, thank you.
Okay. All in favor of the motion then as amended, please raise your hand. All, any opposed? Nick, opposed?
For the same reasons.
All right. We're done.
We are done.
Need a motion to adjourn then.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody opposed? Otherwise, stand
No.
or dismissed.